Hello everyone, thank you all for joining us today. Am I clearly audible to everyone? Thank you. So I welcome you all to this roundtable discussion by the Allied Project. We are going to discuss a very special topic on a special day to me. We can say today is the last day we are being masked in Boston, especially. So we can say we are almost free from tomorrow. So in that way, today it's a good day to discuss about COVID and disabilities. So this is not an unusual event by the Ally Project. It's going to be more like a discussion. We are going to talk freely to each other about how this pandemic, the COVID pandemic, has impacted us, everyone, and especially people with disabilities. So we will start by, I invite everyone to be in a friendly conversation and engage with us. So I would like to start by asking everyone to tell one word or one sentence about what this pandemic means to you in a positive way. Obviously, there have been a lot of negative things which has happened, but we also learned a lot from this pandemic. So I would request each of you to unmute yourself and talk one word or one sentences about what this pandemic has taught us positively. So I would like to go first and say that this pandemic has taught me to be hopeful in life. We have seen a lot of things going on in our lives through this pandemic, but the hope in me has increased dramatically with this pandemic. It's given me a lot of hope to look forward in life. So that is one thing. Anyone can go virtual. You can unmute yourself and go on.
I can unmute. I think that it's taught me to be flexible.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Marley. I'm the president of Diversibility, which is the undergrad disability club on campus. I'm sorry, I'm a bit more pessimistic than Joshua is right now, but for a lot of disabled people, this pandemic has shown to us how many people can be aggressive towards people with disabilities and not think of them in situations and be very selfish.
Thank you for a new perspective, Male. Anyone else?
I have a question for Marley. And that came out more in the pandemic because of the isolation, or why do you think it was the pandemic that caused that?
Sure. I mean, I think the pandemic just kind of escalated our view on the world, just because especially through social media and stuff, people were very aggressive about saying, we're very happy that masks are going away, blah, blah, blah. People are saying we're now in an endemic stage. So they think, okay, everything's fine. We don't need to really worry about anything anymore, without really considering the lives of disabled people. Yeah.
Thank you.
I can go. It taught me to value what I do have. Like I could still keep my job. I could do my job from home, and I had family. It taught me to value that.
I would like everyone to say one word about this question because it's like we need to talk about this. It's a friendly conversation, everyone. Please join us.
Josh, do you want me to read the chats, or do you have your eye on the chats?
Yes, yeah. Okay. Kelly says, it taught me that people are desperate to pretend everything is normal no matter the cost. Exactly, yes. I agree with you too, Kelly. Yes.
Yeah, I'd say exhausting. A lot has happened, especially people who got COVID and dealing with COVID and disabilities. It's like an extra layer he has to go through the pandemic.
Yes, it's really been exhausting. Yes, the pandemic has been exhausting for everyone. welcome Professor Mona. We're started the conversation by I want everyone to say what they, in one word, what they feel about the pandemic. Either it can be positive or it can be critical about it too. So if you want to go.
How many people do we have?
We have one person and we have a lot of people virtually. So you can go if you want to talk about it.
So for me, I think at the height of the pandemic, when we were all very isolated, like I really felt isolated. But at the same time, I think it really kind of gave me perspective on what is it that mattered to me the most. It was a very unique time of life, I would have to say. And we're still kind of in it too right now. Yeah. But a lot of things came out of it that were really good from a perspective of disabilities, from the perspective of like, you know, sometimes it is easier to have an online meeting for people who might not be able to get around very easily. But then like, you know, making sure that everything is accessible. There's just a lot of things that came up that I think existed, but they were hidden. That's what I would say.
Thank you, Professor. Would someone virtually would like to share your thoughts?
I can also mention something else I forgot. Through the pandemic, it seems like the disability community has really grown, especially online, just because so many people have come together, sharing the same experiences, kind of coming together because we're all trying to fight something together. And that's, you know, being able to have equal opportunities, being able to still feel safe as much as everyone else. So even though the community has definitely grown, which is great, and a lot of people have been able to connect that might have never before, a lot of disabled people are still, you know, experiencing issues, especially in different countries. I know there's people who have disabilities who are in Canada. They're currently having a very hard time because their government hasn't been the most supportive for disabled people during the pandemic.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing, Ale. We also have Krisa who says that the pandemic has demonstrated how contemporary American culture undervalues workers in the service sector or customer facing jobs, which is really true. Thank you, Krisa. So now we'll just move on to the next point of discussion. Like, I want to go straight into the topic saying, how has COVID impacted disabilities?
Wait, before we proceed to that, I just want to acknowledge what I think it was Molly.
Molly.
Yeah, Molly, I just want to say that like you're absolutely correct. I think the growing of the disability community is actually a really strong positive. I feel like more people like just like we're able to come together and like bond over that and just be able to support one another. I don't know, I thought that was a really great point that I personally can relate to.
Yes. Thank you, Professor. So, yes, to the next point of discussion. I want to know, like, how has COVID directly impacted disabilities? Anyone can go, like.
COVID in particular has highlighted to a great deal the differences between like disabled people and abled people, and the fact that the world is not built for us, the world is not accommodating to us, and especially for people who are immunocompromised, the world suddenly got a lot more dangerous, and a lot of people did not care. And I think in general, there's so many things that there's just this wide gap. And also everyone who says, oh, we want to go back to normal, to me, it kind of refuses to acknowledge the fact that some of the things that have come about are better, they're good. For the disabled community, having Zoom is amazing because a lot of us are not always able to make it to places in person. Some places aren't accessible. Some places it just may be hard sometimes. So I think especially like having something like Zoom is really important. And the fact that everyone's like, oh, I want to go back to normal. I don't want to go back to normal. This has been a major improvement in my life. My senior year, I got an accommodation where I could go and Zoom any day I wanted. And that drastically reduced the amount of days I was absent. Before, I was absent all the time at school because I was very sick. But that accommodation made it a lot easier for me to get an education. And everyone is like, no more Zoom, no more any of this. To me, that's just kind of dismissing a little bit of the benefits of the pandemic in the way that it helped the disabled community.
Do you think some of those benefits might stick around? As faculty, I don't think Zoom is ever going away. Like students, students expect it, and it's not that hard to press the button. So while people may be in class, I'm not sure that's ever going away. And same with wearing masks. Like I think in Asia, they wore masks before the pandemic, but here you were weird if you wore a mask. Now I think in the winter, I'm going to wear a mask on the train just because it works, So I feel like some of those good things might stick around. At least I'm hopeful that they will, or at least people are more understanding about why we do that. And so I'm hoping that those are some of the positive things maybe, and that they'll linger.
Yeah.
It's kind of, yeah, sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say really quickly. So I think I mentioned before, I'm the president of the Disability Club on campus. We're currently trying to hopefully get a new flex back or some sort of virtual learning model, just because it was so beneficial for so many disabled students. And we understand that professors maybe just didn't like it because it was too difficult to manage having a in-person group and a virtual group. But I mean, Northeastern spent a lot of money getting AnyFlex installed and everything, and just no one's really using it right now. So, even if you're maybe sick one day and you don't necessarily have a disability, but you could still go to class and you don't have to miss class just because you have a cold or something.
I'm surprised you say nobody's using it right now, because I just ended up like, you just press a button you just press a button and it records, and like that's all you have to do. I think from the professor's standpoint, we were required to be in the classroom, yet we were often lecturing to empty classrooms. And that's a horrible feeling, when the norm is that you can stay in bed and watch the lecture. It's just no fun for the professors. So I think most professors are more than willing to let it push that button to accommodate people. We're hesitant to make that become the norm, because then we're lecturing to empty seats. So there's a balance there.
I actually have a question about this topic. So, after the pandemic, I didn't even consider this beforehand. I didn't even think about it. So I think you guys are bringing up really good points. But I never recorded my lectures. So I want to know. So now I record every single one of my lectures, but I don't really have anybody signing in live virtually. But all my lectures are recorded. I even consider participation if you watch the recording and then send me an email. Do you feel like that is good enough as an experience? Yeah.
I feel like recording lectures are amazing. I mean, I know for students who have learning disabilities, it's so much better for them to be able to pause and go back and, go over what a professor said, maybe because they didn't understand a concept or something. And there are students who can't take notes fast enough in class, even if they have an accommodation through the DRC for note takers. Oftentimes, it's very difficult to access those notes, and especially soon after a class. So that's definitely a benefit to recordings. I feel like the only benefit over having hybrid Zoom classes instead of just recordings is to be able to participate in class. So if there's a class that's very, participation based and having conversations, if it were just a recording, you wouldn't be able to do that. But I mean, it depends on who the student is. If there's someone who really loves to participate in class, they would probably really miss not having that chance to do so.
Yeah, thank you for your perspective. So for me, I definitely decided to just record my lectures from this point forward, because even disability or not, I even had students tell me that they appreciated the transcript, because somebody, English was their second language, and even though the transcript that Zoom makes is horrible, it still was better than nothing. And so now I just post all of that and I record it. It was, for me, as a blind person, and even just as a person, I mean, managing two sets of like audiences in person and like on the Zoom was a bit of a challenge for me. But like I'm definitely recording all of my lectures from this point forward.
May I ask, I just want a clarification because we were talking, do you mean that you give live lectures and then you record it, or do you mean you're just recording them all in advance?
No, the live lecture is recorded.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah,
No,
so-
that's very good. It really
so
helps lessen the
everybody-
gap for a lot of students.
Yeah, so everybody can then go back and watch what happened in class or what they missed. Yeah, things like that.
Okay, thank you.
No.
So yes, does anyone else have any thoughts about how COVID has impacted disabilities? Like, can someone give a new perspective on this topic?
I can give a perspective.
Please go ahead,
I
Professor.
feel like I'm doing a lot of talking, but so as a blind person, so we did move mostly to virtual. It was an interesting challenge for me, but it really parsed out kind of some gaps in technology that needed to be addressed for the sake of accessibility, like for a blind person. And I feel like some of them are being addressed for that reason, and I'm really appreciative for that.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor.
Mona, could you give examples about which,
Okay.
where you found?
I'll totally give examples. So, for example, I had like if I was trying to use like a Microsoft product on an Apple operating system with the voice over technology, it wasn't as smooth. So it's like parsing out like, oh no, I need to like use the Microsoft like software on a Windows technology to get JAWS to work with it better. There were issues with regards to, I think Microsoft really kind of worked on making things a little bit more compatible. There are just like slight updates like that just were really honed in on and addressed for that reason. And I thought that was pretty cool. That's not specific enough, but yeah, that's the best I can do right now off the top of my head.
Yeah. So moving on from that, I would like to talk about the inaccessibility of regular disability treatment due to COVID. Like hospitals were flooded. Like we could not even like get the normal treatment because all hospitals turned into COVID hospitals. So we need to talk about the experiences of people with disabilities who had issues with getting regular disability treatment. So can someone like highlight their experience and if they're comfortable and just give a perspective about it?
I can talk about that a little bit. So I have muscular dystrophy, specifically spinal muscular atrophy. And every couple of months, I would have to go into the hospital to get a treatment that I can't do from home. And when COVID hit, I felt very scared to go into the hospital to get that treatment just because, I go to Yale to get this. And so Yale was very full with COVID patients at the very beginning. And, it was a whole, I could still get the treatment, but I was very scared to do so. And even though this treatment is very important for me to stay healthy and strong, I felt like I had to postpone those treatments until I felt like the COVID wave could decrease. And then even then, COVID is so unpredictable. It's not like I could say for sure, okay, if I wait like a month or something, it'll be better. So it's very hard to plan like doctor's appointments and stuff around that too. Also, like a lot of my doctor's appointments, I had to like either postpone them or do them over Zoom. And Zoom doctor appointments aren't great because your doctor can't really examine you or anything. So like the quality of care just felt like it decreased since COVID.
Yeah.
Anybody?
I in particular, I found it quite difficult to get care. By the way, I don't know if I ever introduced myself. I'm Joanna. I'm the vice president of Diversibility. and I have a condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is kind of hard and difficult to treat. And the problem I ran into is most of my doctors are like multiple hours away. And especially with COVID, it was really difficult to get appointments to be let in. And for the longest time, since when this started, I was like a minor, my mom always went in with me, and she knew my medical history better than I did and my medications. And so suddenly now I am forced to try and navigate a system I don't know that much about, that I've been hopped around my entire life, and that I just don't really know what to do. I don't know what to say. I don't know what I'm going in for. And even just getting appointments for things that were really necessary were difficult, and like weighing the consequences of like going to the ER or going to an urgent care if you're really sick, but you could also get COVID. And that's something that was really difficult to deal with, just to know that any choice you make, there's kind of a consequence either way.
Yes, thank you for sharing, Joanna.
So it almost sounds like you kind of lose an advocate when the hospitals are full and it's hard to get appointments. You almost need somebody to advocate on your behalf to help you through the system. I can see how it's much more challenging when the appointments are few and far between and difficult to come by in the first place.
So, apart from regular medical treatment, we can also talk about getting treatment for COVID, and for example, COVID testing during the pandemic for people with disabilities. That was also an issue. People with disabilities could not go to hospitals, and they did not have accessible testing centers in many places. So, can you share some experiences and talk about what do you think about it?
I can talk a little bit about that. So for a lot of my doctor's appointments, especially for any appointments where I was seeing a pulmonologist, so a breathing doctor, I would have to get COVID tested because I would have to take my mask off to be able to do testing and stuff. So for all of those, I would have to get COVID tests. And for those kinds of reasons for testing, it was very easy for me to get COVID tests because they were like a procedure required thing. So I could just go to my like local ER or something, and they had a COVID testing site and I could do it that way. But for anything else where I felt like I was feeling a little bit sick or I just wanted a COVID test for my sanity, it was so much harder to get a COVID test. I for a long time I was on a waiting list for a COVID test to be able to come back to school because they were asking us to get tested before we come back, and I was not able to get a COVID test. I just had to, when I came back, I was super careful. I wore my mask everywhere. I stayed inside my dorm until I could get a COVID test at Northeastern. And that's basically what I had to do. Northeastern, when it was doing the mandatory testing, was amazing. It was very accessible for me being in a wheelchair. They had a dedicated area for people who are disabled to get help and be brought to an accessible testing station. So that was amazing, but I know that's not the case in a lot of areas for people who are disabled and need testing. It can be inaccessible, whether it be the building itself to be able to get into, or being able to get help at a testing center.
Thank you for sharing, Malay. Anyone in the room in person can also share their views. We're talking about testing and vaccination for people with disabilities during the pandemic. It was tough. So.
Oh, I can share my perspective. Like as a blind person, like none of the platforms were accessible. Like it was like, I want to get vaccinated. How do I begin getting vaccinated? Oh, the website that they set out was not accessible. This was not, like all the different like ways were just like literally not accessible, or set up like you try to call a number and then like you're put on hold. But eventually it worked out for me because I just happened to have a doctor's appointment, and then the doctor was like, do you want to get vaccinated? I was like, yes, please. And then it just worked out through the hospital for me. That was the first time. And then they were able to do it the second time, and then I got help. Like, it's just like, it's a whole process, even down to like the testing kits, like the rapid COVID testing kits. Definitely they did not think of a blind person when they created that testing kit. Like, I got it in the mail. I think we all got a testing kit in the mail. And then I didn't even know what it was. I was like, what is this box? Like, I didn't order anything. And then I was like, oh, I think this is a COVID testing kit. So it's well, what happens if you don't have a sighted person near you to help? I remember, like, really, I at one point I was kind of worried about having COVID, and I wanted to take a rapid test, and I went to the nearest CVS, and I was like trying to convince the pharmacist. At that point, I didn't have anybody around me. That could help with this particular process. And so I had to convince the pharmacist at CVS. I was like, please, can you help me with this rapid test? Like, I can't see how to use it. Like, I can't. And then the pharmacist was like, I'm not allowed to administer it. I was like, okay, I understand. You're not allowed to administer it. But can you help? And then the pharmacist was really nice. I was like, can you at least help read it? And then she was like, yes, okay. So she like did everything but administer it, because I couldn't think of any other solution at that moment for me to figure this out. And I really wanted to make sure that I was negative, through this rapid test. But yeah, just another perspective out there, like, at least from a blindness perspective.
Yes. Thank you, Professor. That actually leads to my next point of discussion, like caretaking and people who help people with disabilities. So everyone was virtual. Everyone were virtual. Like, we were all under closed doors. So caretaking was an issue during the pandemic. People who help people with disabilities could not reach out to people. So that is one negative point we had suffered during the pandemic. So how has things changed? How was your experience about it? And what can we do to make, I hope there's no more pandemic, but then if there is a situation, how can caretaking be accessible? And during events like this, during the pandemic or whatever might happen, how can we make sure that it's continuing?
I think a major part of it is just to, change people's mindsets and to make people more considerate of other people. Just because there are so many people who couldn't care less about what was going on. They didn't have the second thought that they might have a family member, or just they might encounter anyone who had a disability or was immunocompromised, and they might get really sick. So I think the major thing is just for people to take more care in situations like this. Back in the early 1900s, there was the Spanish flu or whatever the flu was, and they got over it because everyone worked together, everyone wore masks, everyone, looked out for their fellow man and took care of each other. And it feels like the culture or something has changed since then, and it's become a lot more selfish. So while we do have the super advanced technology in medicine that they didn't have back then, we're still suffering from it just because people couldn't, spend a couple of weeks in their house and not go out and spread COVID.
Yeah. Anyone in the person can share?
And also the one point I can add is like when we are if you think about, if for example, in your self-precaution about other people too, like for example, if I need a caretaker, I should make sure that, if he is protected, like wearing mask all the time, it also helps. He can come or she can come and help us. At the same time, even I should make sure that even I'm also protected. In that way, I think it works.
Yes. Exactly. Thank you for sharing. Anyone on Zoom can also share their views about this.
There's an interesting conversation in the chat on what is essential care. Is if you're getting regular treatment, it seems like that should be essential, but suddenly during COVID that became non-essential. And is that right? Is that fair? It's interesting.
That's
I don't know.
very fair, at least in my experience. I can't really speak to anyone else's, but I think the way it was designated was more so, is this life-threatening? Is this fatal? That's kind of how it seemed to me, because although none of my problems, as far as I'm aware, are like life-threatening, they are debilitating. But it doesn't matter because all these people are very sick. And I understand that the hospitals were incredibly overwhelmed and they didn't have the proper care and the proper tools to handle this. They really didn't. So I don't blame the hospitals and the doctors in any way on that. But it is disheartening to have basically someone kind of tell you that your issues, not intentionally, but your issues are not important right now, and that the pain and the trouble you're having at this moment isn't as important as other things, and that your care is non-essential, and that like, well, you'll survive, so just tough it out for a little bit and then we'll see. But tough it out for a little bit meant like a year or 2 years. It was a very long time. um and so, yeah, they just kind of were like, yeah, if you don't have anything that's like life threatening, or at least that was what was true in my case, you're just going to have to deal with it for a bit, which is very disheartening to hear.
Yeah, and there's something to be said about like the comorbidities with mental health there. So I put in the chat about having chronic illness and needing to monitor that. I also have anxiety disorder, and so not really knowing what's going on with my deteriorating health just kind of compounded all of the things that I was already feeling. So I agree that it's not really the hospital's fault. It's a difficult time, but it is definitely disheartening and anxiety inducing.
Thank you, Kelly, for posting that in the chat. I'm sorry that you had been going through with ADHD and the DRC had no resources, to help you out. I totally get it. That also leads to my next point of discussion. Like everyone has suffered from a type of disability called invisible disability. We've all had a slope down our mental health during the pandemic. I can talk about myself. Like I'm from a country called India, and when last year it was very bad in India, the situation was very critical. Like whenever I used to turn on my television, I could see people dying without resources to help them out of COVID, like oxygen cylinders. So throughout the year, I was locked at home. I was going through a lot of personal mental issues because of being alone. And then just to take out my mind away from the things I'm going through, I turn on the TV and I again see sad news. That really impacted my mental health, and that's the case with most people. Being alone and hearing all sad news and stories around us, it really impacted our mental health. So the pandemic has also given us an increase in invisible disabilities in a way. So that's my perspective about it. Like anyone can share about what they have gone through with this invisible disability.
Josh, do you think it's an increase in awareness of invisibility disability or just an increase in numbers of people with invisible disabilities?
Exactly. The pandemic has certainly brought up the topic of mental health into a larger extent. Like everyone is talking about mental health because of. I can even say that is one of the good things which happened because of the pandemic. Like mental health has become an important issue to talk about. So.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic. It took a pandemic for there to be awareness on so many issues.
Exactly. Yes.
But unfortunately, I think it was Molly who said something like this. But it's almost like a lot of, I mean, and it's partly human nature, but it's something we should be aware of. Is we don't necessarily consider things that we haven't been impacted by, and it's really important to like kind of be less selfish and care about our fellow man and recognize that, like, you know, we all come with our own stories and different needs. And I feel like the pandemic kind of shed light on that gap of how individualistic sometimes we've become.
Yeah.
But now we can talk about some of these topics, like now.
Joanne has a very nice perspective that most people don't want to think about the fact that they could become disabled at any time. That's really nice perspective, Joanna. Thank you. That's true because of the pandemic. Like, we don't even want to think that we have an invisible disability. We just want to, like, don't even want to talk about it sometimes. So yes.
I mean, even as a society, we denied the pandemic for a while there too. Like,
I
people
wanna-
were like, no, there's still people denying.
Yeah.
This is Krista, and I want to hop in, Joanna. What you just said is something I actually think about all the time, because if we think about it, if there's a person that is not living with any disabilities, if they make it long enough, like if they make it to be 80, 90, if they see 100 years old, their mobility, their senses, their perception will be different than when they were 20, 30 years old. And I think that a lot of why like disability, like regular accessibility features aren't integrated into larger considerations, like with architecture or with art, just like on a daily basis, is kind of like because of everybody's latent fear of our ultimate mortality and the fact that, like, oh, like even if I go through my entire natural life without personally having a disability, like if I make it to 100, I will be of a different mobility level than I have now. So I think what you said, Joanna, is something really important and definitely applies to the pandemic and beyond.
The world is definitely not built for disabled people. And it's a good point to bring up the fact that when people get older, they're most likely going to become disabled in some way. The elderly population is a majority disabled, as far as I'm aware. Just a very large portion are disabled, and they have just as much trouble as most of us do navigating and moving around throughout spaces. And the fact that people just don't want to think about the fact that they could become disabled at any time, because disability has such a negative stigma and connotation, and everyone thinks it's like this horrible, dirty word and something that makes you different and awful. And it's just not a word people like, not a word people are comfortable with, not a thing they like to think about. And so people just don't want to think about it. And especially in the pandemic, I saw a lot of people who I would call maybe very, very like nicely kind of delusional about their level of, kind of delusional about their level of like risk. And I saw this in my own parents. And many people didn't want to accept the fact that maybe they were higher risk, especially some people who were like not like 80s or 90s, but maybe hitting like 50s and 60s and some other health conditions. A lot of them didn't want to consider the fact that they are at risk, because to them, they're healthy, there's nothing wrong, it's fine, everything's fine, but it's not. And that's okay. But people just aren't willing to like let go of this tight little grip of like, no, I'm fine, everything's fine, to be like,
even accepting that they're in a higher risk category because of age or because of other conditions. Anything,
which is really sad.
Anything that would separate us from being like the quote unquote perfect, like quote unquote able-bodied, like 30-year-old machine of a human is really scary to a lot of people. But like, yeah, it's like whether or not your mobility or your level of ability changes because of an accident, or because of a genetic disorder, or because of a disease, or because if you just make it to be 95 years old, like things will change for every single one of us. And I think that making peace with that within ourselves will open us up to a lot of like more compassion in society, and like a lot of better design. It's like a lot of better, like much better universal design for like everyday mobility.
I want to jump in and say something to, I can't tell, can you, on Zoom, can you hear me really well? Like, how's the audio?
Yep, we can hear you.
Yeah, thank you.
Joanne, is that your name? Sorry, was it Joanne?
Joanna.
Joanna, really nice
Yes.
to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Molly, it was really, really nice to meet you. One thing that you said, you were talking and then you said, and it's okay. I think that's kind of the crux of it as a society. You said it like the word disability, like it seems dirty and negative. It seems like we approach it, like we hear it like a lack, right?
Mhm.
But then you're like, no, like it's just is, and it's okay, and it's how we deal with it as a society, as individuals. Like, you know, I was diagnosed with being blind when I was 7. I probably had it in my genetic makeup since I was born, you know, since I was created, and it's just a part of who I am, and it's okay. It's not that like I personally am lacking anything. Yes, my eyes do not function, but there are ways around it. It doesn't mean I am. Yeah, like, it's the way we look at it. I really wanted to shed light on the fact that you said, and it is okay. And now, how do we move forward? It's just the way things are, and how do we move forward?
Yeah, thank you. That's fantastic points. It really is just comes down to disability is okay. Disability is not a dirty word. Disability
Yeah,
is a
don't
great
pity me
word.
for it.
I
Like,
love it.
yeah. I don't know
It's a
about you.
great word. It was
I
a very
don't-
liberating word for me.
Yeah, for me, I don't want to be like I've had so many conversations where people sit down and they're like, "You're blind? Oh my god, I'm so sorry." And I'm
Oh,
like,
that's the worst comments to
I
get
know,
by
right? And then-
far. They're so awful.
and I'm not like, why are you sorry? Like,
Hmm.
I actually live an awesome life. Like, you know, I consider myself very lucky, very privileged. You know, I'm living my dream. I love the job that I have here. Like,
Mm.
you know, it's sure. Do I wish I could see? I'm gonna be honest. I do, but
Hmm?
okay, I don't have eyesight, just like I don't have $1 million. Like, I'll be fine. Like,
Hmm.
I don't know. This is my
I-
personal perspective.
I totally get it. I think especially the comments you said when they sat down, they're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Those comments are very common. I'm sure as many of you know. I've gotten the one quite a lot where it's like, "Wow, you're so brave." And I just sit there and I think to myself, my existence isn't bravery. I just woke up this morning. Like nothing about me existing and going about the world is bravery, but yet the way that society is taught to treat disabled people is, in my opinion, incredibly insulting. They are taught to say, I'm so sorry. They're taught to say, you're inspiring, you're brave, you're something, you're other. They are taught to say that because that's what the general world thinks is okay, thinks is good. But to us, at least to me, those comments are incredibly hurtful and damaging, and I can't stand them. But
I feel like,
unfortunately,
call me
the world.
brave when I go skydiving or something. I don't know.
Yeah. When I do something actually impressive, not when I just like write on a piece of paper, like. Yeah, the world just
I've
needs
gotten
to
that
like, kind of
comment too,
accept
Joanne.
disability.
I've been
You
like,
have?
sorry, I've had like sign. Can you sign? Yes, I can sign my name. Wow.
Oh my gosh.
I'm
Yeah.
faculty. Okay, yeah. But anyways, like moving on.
Yeah,
Anyway.
but yeah, those are just my opinions on it in general.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree with Joanna. I mean, my disability is very obvious. I'm in a power wheelchair. So as soon as anyone, sees me, people come up to me, they start saying, "Oh, you're so great for going outside. Wow, you're out in public with other people." And I also get infantilized a lot. Because for some reason, some people think if you have a physical disability, you might also have a mental disability, and that's not even okay to infantilize someone who has a mental disability, which is horrible. And like with anything that I do, even if it's like just, getting good grades in classes or something, or doing something that is, something that should be maybe recognized, they go really over the top with me and trying to make it known that I've done something amazing, and they look at me for inspiration or something. So when I was growing up, it was very hard for me to recognize my actual, my worth and how well I was doing in school and stuff, because people kept telling me how good I was at everything. And then it was a very big shock when I got to a certain age and people were suddenly starting to be honest with me. And, I was figuring out where I was in comparison to other people. So yeah, it's definitely harmful when people do that to people with disabilities.
Just so you guys know, I just did the Northeastern sensitivity training that we have to do. And in that training, it says, do not do this to do disabled people. So the word is out there. We're being trained not to say, oh, you're so amazing for doing that. It
I
was
mean,
it's part of the training.
that's great. Yeah, I mean, so another kind of issue that a lot of students are talking about at Northeastern who are disabled is we have no idea if professors are trained, like you said, they are on certain issues like that. It's great to know that you are, but as disabled students, we have no idea because some professors aren't the best advocates for students who are disabled. There are some professors who make it very difficult to get accommodations or seem very off-putting to even ask for accommodations. So that's why a lot of us are just curious, what is it that you guys are taught for situations like that?
I would say in general, very little. We're taught very little. And that's why the DRC should be your advocate. If you have trouble with professors, go through the DRC. They're there to advocate for you to the professors. We have to do mandatory sensitivity training, but that's about it. It's very little.
Yeah, and just quickly about the DRC, while it is there for us and it can be a good resource, a lot of people have issues with the DRC. They're currently, it seems like to us, they're very understaffed and underfunded. A lot of the DRC advisors have suddenly dropped off and have not yet been replaced by other staff members. So it's very hard to get our accommodations and get help with the stuff that we need. We were also told by another Northeastern admin that for situations where we are like having problems getting accommodations from professors, that we shouldn't go to the DRC. We should go to this other person because it could be a legal issue if they're not giving accommodations. So as disabled students, we have no idea what the route is to take for certain situations, and it's not clear to us at all what we should be doing.
It's really helpful to hear. I think part of the reason Mona and I are doing this project is to bring awareness of these types of issues. We had Mary Barrows here from the DRC last week, and I wish you could have been here to like voice these concerns. Because she told the one thing I learned about is we as professors, we should always encourage the students to go through the DRC for accommodation, not to just accommodate because out of the goodness of our heart, because it's to their benefit. And if you're saying it's actually hard to go through the DRC, that is fantastic feedback. And that's something that we can work on at the university level.
And I just want to put it out there, Molly, that like I hear you, and even I didn't go to Northeastern as an undergrad, but I have myself been a blind student going through undergrad, graduate school, going through as a postdoc, and now I'm faculty. So I hear you. I've been through what you're talking about at different institutions when I was younger.
Yeah, and
Yes. Oh, sorry, Marley. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say really quickly, I have friends who go to other universities in Boston, and they, to be honest, are very impressed with how Northeastern does treat their disabled students. I have a friend at BU who is in a wheelchair, and they're having a horrible experience. Nothing is accessible to them. Their disability center is horrendous. So we do appreciate what the DRC does do for us, but we feel like the university isn't giving them the resources that they need. And there is no like concrete structure, it feels like, for students with disabilities. There is the DRC, but if the DRC isn't able to function as well as it should, it can be very harmful to students.
There are tons and tons and tons of students registered with the DRC. And again, I would totally second what Marley says, that I personally, again, we don't necessarily know the exact inner workings of the DRC, so we're just making our best guesses, but it does seem understaffed and underfunded, especially because the university kind of refuses to give a lot of support outside of the DRC to disabled students. And the DRC has a lot of students to manage, and some of the advisors have left under circumstances we are not known. We were notified at 5 p.m. the day they left with no warning. So that was a bit difficult. But again, we want to make sure we're emphasizing that, like, we're not blaming the DRC or anyway. We just want more university support for this because it's so difficult. In our club, many members talk about this, and we talk about this stuff all the time, especially if professors aren't like giving accommodations. They will go to the DRC and the DRC will say something to them, and then sometimes the professors will continue to not give it. But at that point, the amount of mental energy it takes for that student to have to go again and be like, hey, this professor is still not accommodating us. They're still not doing anything. We're already this far into the semester. I can't learn to the degree I can. The amount of mental and emotional strain that puts on students, it cannot be ignored. I've seen it. I've heard many stories from many students, and it really cannot be ignored. The fact that it is a little bit difficult to get that done.
Your words are really resonating with me. Sorry, does somebody want? I don't know.
Yeah, sorry, this is Sandra. Go ahead, Mona.
I was gonna say, like, I can speak. When I was an undergrad myself, I had a faculty member who didn't even want me in his class. It was a physics 2 class or whatever, and then he basically was like, "You're blind. I'm not gonna accommodate you. You don't belong here. You're gonna fail my class. I don't want to change anything about how I teach because you're in my class." Literally said those words to me, to my face. But I still wanted to take this class, and I had no idea also as a 19-year-old at the time that this was probably legal, like actionable, I could have taken legal action, right? I had no idea. I just wanted to get through a class and get a good grade. Like, that was my end-all be-all goal, and so I totally hear you. And then even later on, when I was like applying for graduate school, I needed to take the chemistry GRE because a lot of programs required it. Guess what? I call up the GRE people, and they tell me, "Oh, we don't know how to make this exam accessible to you. Nobody's ever asked for that." Like, as a blind person, I'm like, "But I need to take a chemistry GRE to be able to fulfill a requirement." And they're like, "Sorry, here's a letter stating that we can't provide it." And so, like, I actually then devised my own plan with the head of my department at Wellesley at the time, and he was amazing. I took an old GRE, like chemistry GRE, like they made it accessible for me, and like we hacked something together. But
you shouldn't have had to do that. You should not have been responsible for doing that. That was not your responsibility or job, and yet unfortunately it fell on your shoulders. I'm very sorry that happened to you. That's awful.
Yeah, there's a timeline. I wanted to get into grad school. Like, at the end of the day, like, am I gonna wait around for like legal action to be taken against ETS? No. I had a goal.
So it sounds like it would be really helpful if you guys could, because the mental energy to get action taken, I can see is like, oh God, I can't be bothered. But if you could have a place to go who could advocate for you on your behalf, it's supposed to be the DRC.
That is exactly what we're looking for.
Yeah, that's
exactly
what
what
we're
we're looking for.
It's great feedback.
Yeah, we're trying to work with some of the upper admin, especially in the cultural and spiritual life department, to get like a disability center, not something separate from the DRC. So it's more, giving us resources for certain stuff, figuring out what we need to do in certain situations, and also just like making it somewhat of a cultural center too, because before us as a club, there was nothing for disabled students as like a group or anything. So if it could be a place for disabled students to come together and, share their experiences and make friends, that would be amazing.
Yeah, let Mona and I know how we can help with that. This disability awareness project through the ODEI is part of, like, it's not just faculty. Faculty has nothing for disabilities. We don't even have a DRC for disabilities, but it's faculty and student awareness. So if it helps, just let us know if we can advocate.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah, reach out to me, Molly and Joanna. It's really nice to meet you.
And I would love for you guys to bring your club or advertise to the club the future events. Particularly, there's one with campus planning on physical accessibility. So just to hear like how they plan new buildings and what are the buildings that you can't get into and stuff like that. It'd be really fantastic to have feedback, because we have the ears of the campus planner then.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we have been advertising to our club these meetings. I'm not sure how many people show up, but it is, a Friday afternoon. Students might not want to show up, so we understand that. But I will definitely try to attend most of these meetings. I've just been busy before, which is why I haven't been here before. I know Joanna's attended a few of these, so at least one of us will always try to come to one of these meetings.
Thank you so much. Now, I really thank Ms. Highland Betsy and Ms. Rachel for sharing out wonderful resources. If you permit me, I can also put this in our website, in our Allied Project website. And yes, so if Joanna can quickly talk about next week's COVID Town Hall, that would be great. You can tell about your event. That will, it will be a good.
You want me to talk about the COVID town hall? Who's talking about it?
Yes.
Me? Oh yeah, because Marley's gone. Okay, so NU Mutual Aid and Diversibility, and I'm sorry, I think I forgot one other club, is holding a COVID town hall on Monday at 7 p.m. I believe. I will try and make sure that's the correct date. But basically, it's a place where faculty, like dining hall workers, students, grad students can all come and share their concerns over COVID and some of the situations and some of the things that may come up with the fact that they're taking away the mask mandate. It's just kind of a place to come. It's going to be moderated. It should be a good time in general. It's just kind of a place to come discuss. It is Monday at 7 on Zoom, and you have to register at a place that I can link in chat. I'm sure it's planned for the semester. We do strongly grant through my office. All right. Oh, okay. We will look into that. Thank you. I can link the thing in the chat to sign up. If any of you are interested, we would love to have people come just to kind of share their perspective and everything like that. Let me see if I can find it.
Thank you, Joanna, for sharing, and thank you, Ms. Jody, for for this kind gesture given to Diversibility. Thank you for. I really want to thank Diversibility for all the support they've given Allied Project. It's really great to have your voices in the project. Thank you, Joanna. Thank you, and please.
We're really trying to work together. We want to thank you guys for helping out, and I see many people from administration in different areas that are here, and I just want to say that on behalf of Diversibility, we really are thankful, and we really are super appreciative of the fact that you are here, and and the questions you ask, it does show that you're like paying attention and trying, and definitely our club is paying attention to the fact that you're here. So thank you so much. It really means a lot to us that you guys show up to these meetings and try to discuss stuff.
Thank you. I also request everyone to fill out the survey form, which I've put in the chat. I also invite you to our next event, which is on 25th of March. It's about making events accessible for the deaf. We have deaf professors from Northeastern who are going to come and talk about their experience and their journey and how to make events accessible for the deaf. So please join us using the same Zoom link in the same room on 25th of March at 3 p.m.
Yeah. I have the link to sign up for the thing. I'm putting it in chat. It's pretty simple to find after, by the way. But yes, you have to sign up to be able to get the link to attend. Thank you. Sorry.
Also, thank you for this wonderful conversation. I really loved all the perspectives. I hope we all got some insights about how COVID has impacted us. I thank you all for joining us. Thanks everyone in person and virtually for joining us and for all the resources you've given us. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.